Korekiyo Shinguji is most definitely a character that goes. He doesn't go hard or anything, but he just goes. He's one of the students of the Ultimate Academy for Gifted Juveniles, and a member of the Killing Game from New Danganronpa V3, everyone's new semester of killing. To say he's eccentric would be a huge understatement, as even though he has a very reserved nature, he still manages to stand out through his design and characterization, and not for the best reasons. Korekiyo, or Kiyo as I'll be calling him from now on, is the ultimate anthropologist, while in Japanese his title would be something more along the lines of the super high school level folklorist. This is an important distinction to make, as in V3, Kiyo is very much more centered around the subject of folklore, or customs, mostly Japanese ones, as opposed to the more broad subject that is anthropology. Basically, the translation is weird, and if you're wondering why Kiyo never mentions the biology aspects of anthropology, that's why. Design-wise, Kiyo is one of few characters over 6 feet tall in the newest class of the Ultimate Academy. He's slender in all the right places, and has a very questionable fashion choice with the whole red band on his right arm thing. His uniform covers most of his body through bandages and a mask, automatically making him the most mysterious character, as we get to see nothing besides his pale skin, his yellow eyes, and his fabulous hair. Now, so far, this could be the ideal fictional character. I mean, Danganronpa plus anthropology? That's like 2 of my favorite things put in one character. But if I had only positive things to say about this character, I wouldn't be making a video. So, while I do admire his design, this will all end as soon as we get the reveal of honey. Okay, his sister. Good God, do I have a lot of things to say about his sister. Think of his sister as a rabbit hole, something small and innocent at first, which goes deeper and becomes darker as time moves on. But before I dive into that cursed rabbit hole, let's look at something slightly more innocent, like his free time events and Love Hotel cutscene. So in his free time events, he's introduced as something of a creep, apparently, as he just monologues about how beautiful humanity is. I don't know why it's considered creepy, but you know what? It does count as eccentric, I guess. Keep in mind that at this point you are still playing as Kaede, which is why it's so much weirder when he asks you to be friends with his sister when you all leave the academy. When you first see this, you probably shrug it off as Kiyo being a decent big brother. He's visibly offended when Kaede asks him about a sister complex, which is good, right? He doesn't seem to have siscon tendencies. So Kaede agrees to meet his sister, although she is still creeped out by his effeminate ways and bizarre speech patterns. A major tragedy later, and we now get to know more about Kiyo through a new pair of slightly more jaded eyes. With Shuichi, we get more or less the same thing as with Kaede, as he passionately describes the purpose of anthropology. I personally love this first interaction with Korekiyo, as it shows that anthropology is really everywhere, from the lies of 4chan boards to urban legends told by your friends on the playground. And it really shows that Kiyo has found love for the talent assigned to him, unlike certain characters who would rather be someone else. The next free time event is slightly more comedic, as it reveals more about Kiyo's mask and the fact that he has one for pretty much every occasion. He manages to make tea and cookie no-clip through his mask to the surprise of Shuichi, who is just flabbergasted at the whole scene. Kiyo reassures Shuichi by telling him that his brain is too small and they each go back to their rooms. Now, because Shuichi isn't a girl, he didn't have the privilege of having the sister talk during the second free time event, so that's why they're doing it during the third free time event. In this event, Kiyo states that he pursued anthropology as a potential interest due to learning of that stories similar to Princess Kaguya existed all around the world. Shuichi learns that his sister was a major factor that pushed him to become an ultimate. She helped him by just generally motivating him and even made him his uniform, which means that the origins of the mask go even deeper. Kiyo is visibly elated when reminiscing about his sister making his uniform, and the two agree that Kiyo should work hard on his talent to make sure to satisfy his sister so she can heal faster. Once again, we are reminded that his sister only likes women, so Shuichi will probably never meet her. FTE4 is all about myths. Here the boys talk about the Indonesian legend of Hainuwele, which, if you didn't know, is about a girl who was born in a coconut and defecated valuable items such as gold earrings or porcelain. She made the man who found her incredibly rich, but as she was on the Maluku Islands, she had to experience their customs as she grew up abnormally quickly compared to the other humans. One of these customs was a dance that lasted 9 nights at the Tamene Siwa. In this dance, women gave areca nuts to the dancing men as an offering. Hainuwele, along with the other women, was at the center of the man dancing in circles, but instead of giving nuts, she gave them defecated gifts. These offerings sufficed for about a week, as the dancers decided that it was too bizarre for them. So during the last night, they trapped her in a hole at the center of the dancing and buried her alive, drowning out her cries with loud singing and dancing. Ameta, the man who found her, searched for her but to no avail. He learned from an oracle that she had been murdered and went to the village to dig out her corpse. He then cut up the corpse and spread pieces of it all around the island, giving its residents access to new and useful plants, these plants that you will see in Indonesian food most of the time nowadays. He then gave Hainuwela's arms to Satine, or Satene, to create a spiral gate on the former dancing ground where Hainuwela was killed. This former dancing ground then became the gate to the underworld, and those who were able to go through it post-mortis reincarnated as humans, while those who couldn't reincarnated as animals or plants, I guess. This story is surprisingly relevant to Kyo in the story, so don't forget about it right now. This legend is similar to other ones like Gemochi, or other stories with gods disguised as beggars, which once again shows how interesting anthropology is when looking at every variation of similar stories from across the world. Kyo then tells Shuichi that one of his favorite myths is the one of Medusa, a former goddess of nature who transformed into a fearsome monster destined to be slain by Perseus. The myth is still shared around nowadays, though not only to show how far humanity has come, but it could also reflect how death is inevitable. Medusa has killed many, and even if she is eventually slain by Perseus, it's not like other people aren't going to stop dying at any point. And throughout this explanation, Shuichi notices Kyo is grinning through the mask, which slightly startles him as it gives the impression that he doesn't fear death. Now, I really like this moment. It kind of foreshadows the events that will take place later on in the game, and it also makes Kyo a much more interesting character as he doesn't fear death like certain other characters. Kyo then notices Shuichi's weird facial expression, so they go back to talking about myths. They then part ways with that weird interaction almost forgotten. The final free time event is about anthropological fieldwork. It's about how Kyo travels around and his near-death experience when he went to a village that taught him all about bondage. Now sure, you might think this is a one-off gag, Korekiyo liking bondage, but trust me, there's a lot more where that came from. The other bizarre thing about this event is how happy he is when he mentions that he saw someone who was taken from him by death. Perhaps as a parent? Spoiler alert, it's his sister. He then invites Shuichi to join him on fieldwork when they escape the academy, and Shuichi accepts as he truly believes that they have formed a close bond, completely ignoring how creepy he is at times. Which is commendable as Korekiyo just had a monologue talking about how bondage was good for him as he saw a dead family member. Now these free time events don't really do much to develop Korekiyo as a character. It's not like Kazuichi or Mikan where they get a tragic backstory. No, Korekiyo is just passionate about his topic, and we learn that he has a very strong familial bond with his sister. He's very knowledgeable about anthropology, myths, legends, folklore, and all that, and yeah, there's not really much to go off of just with his free time events. So that's why, now we're going to be looking at the Love Hotel, or the Hotel Kumasutra. Now for the innocent, the Hotel Kumasutra is a new feature added in Danganronpa V3 in which Shuichi has a one-on-one event with another student's fantasy, or dream. These vary from the wholesome to the straight-up assault, and on the scale of Kaede to Miyu, I think Kyo goes towards the Miyu side, because wow, there is a lot to unwrap here. So in Kyo's fantasy, Shuichi is enamored with him, and in this moment, he responds to the advances. Shuichi is confused when Kyo tells him that he can run away, and he's only doing this out of curiosity. This initial confusion becomes terror as Kyo tells Shuichi that he will enjoy it, and takes out a red rope from under the bed. Shuichi then makes a run for it, but is then thrown back onto the bed by Kyo, who announces that Shuichi could run but never specify that he wouldn't try to stop him. Shuichi wants an explanation as Kyo talks about how he wants to toy with his body, but upon more thinking he decides that an explanation isn't needed because it's BDSM time, baby! Shuichi is panicking, but Kyo's sultry voice is making him black out, with the last thing he remembers seeing is Kyo gliding towards him with the red rope in his fists. Now, I don't even really want to explain this event. We know that Kyo discovered bondage through his fieldwork, and only know this through his last free time event. So to have this contrasting with a trusting and caring Korekiyo from the free time event just feels very stupid and wrong. And the Love Hotel scene is made even weirder when you realize that Shuichi most definitely did not give consent. Now, I know this is a fantasy, so it's not real, but the fact that it's a fantasy means that Korekiyo really did want this, and that just makes him a little more screwed up. So if you present non-consensual sex as a fantasy in your game about high schoolers, then you're actively trying to ruin a character's reputation. Which honestly just sucks for Korekiyo, as this could have been maybe, I don't know, a redeeming factor for him, but it just makes his whole reveal at Chapter 3 even worse, as we finally know a bit more about Korekiyo and his true colors. Alright, now that all of that is untangled, we can finally tie it all back to the main story. So in the first two chapters, Kyo doesn't really do much when it comes to important events. In the first chapter, he's pretty cooperative when it comes to doing things like investigating the academy for a way out, but for the most part, he stays in the background. He was one of the few characters to remain level-headed when the first blood perk and the time limit were announced, and just sorta accepted his fate. While the time limit is supposed to run out, Kyo alongside a few others were just chilling in the dining hall and didn't really do much to stop the killing. He was very oblivious to everything going on in the lower floors of the academy, and when he finally saw Rentaro's body, he had just accepted the situation, like a true Sigma male. This shines a light on his rational thinking abilities and his general aptitudes when it comes to being just calm and composed all the time. He openly cooperates during the investigation by giving an alibi to other students, while he's also backed by other students' testimonies. So yeah, his suspicion is taken away almost immediately, which is very good for him. So the class trial begins, and Kyo interestingly points out that Tsumugi could have been the killer based on the fact that she went to the women's room at the time of the murder, which as it turns out was the truth, but we don't find that out until it's way too late. Like everyone else, Kyo is surprised when Shuichi's inner protagonist awakens, and Kaede is destined to face tragedy. One major plot twist later, the survivors uncover more parts of the academy, hoping to keep Kaede's dream alive by sussing out the mastermind and escaping the academy to return back to the outside world. The students find some more research labs, a pool, a casino, and the worst decision ever made by a living human. Everyone then uses flashback lights, which spoons feed more lore to the player, and that's more or less all there is in the first day, story-wise. There's a special event at the casino where Kyo points out that luck isn't the same thing as superstition, and explains how words such as jinx link to the Japanese concept of kotodama, which is basically the power of words. Having feelings of misfortune could affect someone's confidence, which hinders their performance, showing that Ryoma wouldn't be able to have such an impressive winning streak through luck exclusively. Once again, we see how knowledgeable Kyo is and how passionate he is about anthropology, being able to link pretty much everything back to the topic no matter the situation. Everyone meets up the next morning with motive videos, similar to the first game's first motive. However, this time the Mono Cubs mixed up the videos, letting people find out more about their classmates. Sadly, we never get to see Korekiyo's motive video, which sucks because I think we would have all benefited from seeing just what is up with that man. So the class then decides to keep their motive videos, as exchanging them could lead to another murder. Some bonding and potential bondage later, it's nighttime, and certain students have been taken to Gonta's research lab after being knocked out. Wouldn't you know it, Kyo is one of those students, and once again he gets an airtight alibi, as while this insect meet and greet is going on, Ryoma is being drowned by Kurumi. Right after that disaster, certain students, Kyo included, went to Himiko's magic show, where instead of seeing a short magician in a fish tank, they saw a short tennis player get devoured by piranhas. Now some people are panicking, but Kyo just accepts it, and another investigation begins. During this investigation, Kyo immediately points out the length of a rope used just by a small glance, again showing just how much he knows about bondage. Which is very useful on one hand because we know about the potential uses of this rope, but on the other it's very creepy because we know what Kyo would normally do with this rope. So during the class trial, Kyo praises the killer for having such a convoluted plan and following through with it. The way he praises the killer slightly reminds me of another character with many flaws, but that's probably my imagination, right? Anyways, Kurumi is then declared guilty and she makes a run for it, creating another one of the cruelest executions in games, this time featuring my favorite Japanese Prime Minister. So you know how I've been praising Kyo for most of this video, only calling him out on his flaws in rare occasions? Well, that's about to change as we move on to Chapter 3, the transfer student for Beyond the Grave. Something to note about Danganronpa is that there is a phenomenon known as the third case syndrome, a bizarre feature that basically tells us that every third chapter from the series is downright terrible. This doesn't only apply to the main series though, as Ultra Despair Girls is also home to this trope. Let me just tell you that this chapter is no different. Daily life kicks off strongly as you get access to a new floor, which looks just like some kind of rickety Resident Evil lookalike area, and we get access to Kyo's research lab full of antiques and ritualistic artifacts which hold a lot of value to him. So much so that he threatens to rip out Kokichi's nerves when he touches the gold leaf katana without his explicit permission. Kyo then offers to help Shuichi communicate with dead people through a seance, and even if it would be cool for Shuichi to talk to Kaede, he refuses because, I don't know, he's probably too shell-shocked for that. They find another flashback light and find out that they're all dead for some reason, so maybe Danganronpa is just purgatory. Who knows? Also during this time, the Mono Cubs have been dying off and kind of replaced Monokuma and really didn't want any other fighting, so they gave the survivors a Necronomicon, which apparently can bring one of the dead students back to life. Ain't that cool? Maybe we'll finally be able to see Kaede again. Pretty much everyone, excluding Korekiyo, is surprised by this, but he doesn't believe in resurrection, even if he does believe in seances and whatnot. Which cements the fact that it's definitely not going to happen. I mean, if you have the guy who thinks you can talk to dead people think that resurrection isn't real, it's probably not real. which is cool because it actually, gives Korekiyo some importance. He's very knowledgeable about this, and even he doesn't think it's possible. Angie then decides she's going to use it to resurrect Rentaro, and everyone that stands against her will be forced to face off the student council, which Kyo isn't a part of. While the Monocubs thought resurrection would bring the students together, it creates a huge divide, and we all know that feuds lead to murder in this franchise. I just want to make it clear that I really have nothing against Angie or the student council. They want to prevent another murder from happening by any means necessary. Sure, they blocked the manhole to prevent anyone from escaping, but we can just chalk it up as a little trolling. Anyways, a revolt is to take place as some are fed up with Angie's rule, but when they go to confront her, they find her body, which is made even more eerie with the hanging wax figures hanging from the ceiling. But this is Danganronpa. Another body is sure to be found, right? Apparently not. An investigation begins and there's no sign of another death. Maybe this chapter will actually do something right. Kyo proposes to make a seance to communicate with Angie so she can finally say who killed her. Some students, robots excluded, perform the caged child seance in the dark, and when there's no response from Angie, they turn on all the lights again or candles to reveal Tenko's body. And there you go, there's another body. Okay, I will give it this though. There was another body during the investigation, which is something that has never been done before, and I think that's pretty cool. Although it still sucks that there are two bodies, they actually put a twist on it this time. This murder also adds the creepiness factor of the chapter, as Tenko was the medium. She was meant to be possessed by Angie, so who knows, maybe a ghost could have done it. Maybe Rentaro actually killed her. So the investigation concludes pretty soon, and prepare yourself because this will be the worst roller coaster ride you've ever been on, so keep your hands inside and do not scream at all. The class trial starts, and Kyo takes charge of the conversation a lot more, which definitely makes him stand out as a potential suspect. Now in this game, if two murders are committed between two class trials, only the first killer will be executed, meaning that if Angie and Tenko had different killers, only Angie's killer would be executed, and the rest of the cast would have to live with a murderer among them. Because they decide that Tenko's death wasn't pointless, they decide to solve that mystery first, and Kyo pretty quickly admits that he did in fact kill her, which was a stupid decision. Yes, it would have been a decent twist if there were two murderers, and Kyo immediately admitted to it because he knew that he wouldn't get executed either way, but because he had already killed without much motive, this already makes him more suspicious, so the big reveal isn't really that unpredictable. So while he's gloating about committing a murder, the others figure out that only Kyo could have killed Angie, which makes him have possibly the worst breakdown in any trial. I know that killer breakdowns are supposed to be the lowest of any character. We have Kurumi in the previous chapter who tried to manipulate everyone and gaslighting them to show that she wasn't the killer. And yeah, it makes sense for Kyo to have a stupid breakdown, but god is it awful, especially when you compare it to other bad breakdowns like Mikan's or Celeste, who weirdly are all killers in Chapter 3. I wonder why Chapter 3 is so hated. I also want to preface that Todd Haberkorn, the dub voice actor for Kyo, absolutely killed it, but holy hell he must have been confused when he was given the script. During this breakdown, Kyo loses his calm. He starts stuttering, repeating himself, hyperventilating, and eventually the big reveal happens. The mask falls off. It's revealed that Kyo's sister is possessing him? Now, it's unclear whether it's something akin to a tulpa or it's just a ghost, but either way, it is bizarre. Eventually, they understand that their constant mindless rebuttals get them nowhere, and he admits to killing Angie. Everyone votes, he's found guilty, and it's time for the calm before the storm. Following this conclusion, Kyo reveals that he was actually a serial killer, but not because he enjoyed it or anything like that. No. It was to make 100 friends for his dead older sister. What? So yes, Kyo decided to kill Tenko and Angie so they could befriend his sister in hell or wherever she is. And it gets even worse when it's revealed that he loves his sister in an incestuous way, which is a can of worms I won't open right now because this is already a lot to take in. There is an interpretation of Kyo being, I don't know, emotionally abused or manipulated by his sister, which is why he shows so much love for her, but I don't really buy into that, so yeah, incest as a whole is a weird situation that I don't really want to comment on right now, so yeah. Anyways, I personally hate this twist. Having such a calm, collected individual being reduced to incestuous serial killer is absolutely stupid and derails all the traits that he had been revealing so far. Yes, he was creepy at times, but he was still a resourceful character that didn't mind sharing his knowledge. He was always rational and was always trying to help when class trials were going on, so to make him generic crazy man number 4780 just doesn't feel right. I know Korekiyo hasn't had much character development, whether it be through free time events or just the story in general, but they did him very dirty, and I don't really know if he deserves it. There are a few things that could have been done. Maybe just take away the whole sister thing, and you could have made it so that someone else had killed Angie, so it would force Himiko and Kyo to live right after Tenko's death. Many things could have been done to even slightly improve Kyo's character, and it pains me to see him being done so dirty after all his free time events and bonding. Like every other Chapter 3 killer, Kyo doesn't fear his execution, which links back to basically every story he has been telling us. You know, how he doesn't fear death through the Medusa legend, how Hainuwele talks about reincarnation, and how Kyo believes that he'll be reunited with his sister after he goes through the gate to the underworld, or the metaphorical gate to the underworld. All of this death talk has been leading to his execution in just a lot of foreshadowing and hidden ways, which I personally love. It's kind of like Chekhov's gun, but also not really, and it's amidst all of this chaos with the incest and whatnot. So, yeah, do I really like it? I'm very conflicted on that. Now, his execution is probably one of my favorites, as it starts off with bondage, and just, you know, his love for bondage and red ropes, as he's tied in the inverse shrimp knot, which is a Japanese torture knot that was apparently used as interrogation methods, and is now used in BDSM as a pretty advanced knot from what I gathered. This links back to his, you know, personal love of ropes, which is why this execution feels a lot better, as it's more personal towards him. He then gets boiled alive and is reincarnated, which links back to the whole theme of reincarnation in Hainuwele, as, you know, he's come back as a ghost and is ready to meet his sister with open arms. They embrace together for a few moments until Monokuma appears and starts throwing salt alongside his sister, who also weirdly throws salt. Now, Korekiyo is basically exorcised, and the two watch on as Korekiyo just disappeared. I absolutely adore this execution. Yes, it's cruel. I might have been feeling a little spite from all the trial shenanigans. It might have been very cathartic, but the way it's executed, no pun intended, is just perfect. You have little details that link back to Korekiyo's free time events and backstory, and the whole thing with him not fearing his death and finally feeling hope to see his sister again, being turned into despair as she turns against him, is just so well done, and really shows what Danganronpa is all about. Just how it takes you to the highest highs with hope and plunges you into the depths of despair immediately after. That's exactly what Danganronpa is about, and it's shown nowhere better as with Korekiyo's execution. So while yes, I hated a lot of his aspects, I think that Korekiyo Shinguji is still a character that I slightly enjoy, I think. So yeah. In a few words, Korekiyo Shinguji is a character I love in concept, but in execution, hate in more ways than one. He's probably one of the main things that sparked my interest in anthropology, and manages to be a reliable character, but certain events like the Love Hotel scene and Trial 3 just hinder my appreciation for him so much that I kinda hate seeing him now. And with that concludes my video essay / rant on why Korekiyo Shinguji, the ultimate anthropologist, is one of the worst handled characters in all of Danganronpa. Thank you for watching, like and subscribe for more life-changing content, and goodbye.